Make sure to check out Sons of Fate, the series of the boy from distant lands who helps forge the future of the Tokugawa shogun and the history of Japan. Available in hardcover, softcover, and manga version at blackberryjuice.net from Blackberry Juice Publishing, along with my Patreon, where I have exclusive content and goods. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the latest episode of If Japes Drew This. Today we'll be working on one of the illustrations for an ad I'm doing, and we're doing it with my brand new Winsor Newton Series 7 sable brush. Staple of what I use when I do my illustrations. There's a zoom in for it. I'm excited about this because it is literally a brand new brush I'm breaking in for this illustration. So, that being said, let's get started with what we're doing here. So the drawing I'm doing here is going to be an ad for Sons of Fate series, an ongoing ad. I did a first one for Kamal, talking about it's not Yusuke because I draw very similarities between the two characters, being that they're both black samurai warriors. I'll say samurai-esque warriors in the feudal Japanese times. I say samurai-esque because there's differences in being a samurai, being Ronin, and other things that are important to the story, especially in Sons of Fate, to not deem a person holding a katana as a samurai. So those are the similarities, and that's where they end. But in this one, it is a second ad about Lady Akemi, in the equivalence to another pretty good animation, Blue-Eyed Samurai. Her name, there's another protagonist in there named Lady Akemi, but the differences end there. I wanted to highlight how good that was and also show the differences. So we're working on that illustration. For those who are interested, there is a much longer version of this video. This is a highly sped up version that is over an hour of me doing it in real time without it being sped up, where the commentary will be a little different because I'm going through the bits and pieces of getting the drawing in. And just gushing over the fact that a new brush means I can get real thick to thin lines more than a brush that I've worked to death, which I did my last brush. As you can see there, I did a zoom in because I literally wanted to show you how thin I can get this line and do a thick to thin line, which is why I prefer brush over crow quills. I can use a crow quill, and I like crow quills, and I use them depending on what I'm doing. Basically, if I'm doing structures and stuff, I do that. But actually, a lot of my 95% of my work is with a brush, and it's because I can go thick to thin, as you can see there. And in doing that, it actually saves me a lot of time, and even having to go back and fill in the blacks the positive and negative space, or the negative space, even where a crow quill I'd have to do the line and then go back in with a brush anyway or something thicker. I also tend to push hard on my brushes or what I'm inking with, and because of that, I'll end up splitting the crow quill, causing splatters I didn't want in places, which just adds a cleanup, and therefore I'm just more accustomed to the brush, even though I can use the crow quill and get results that are equally as good as the brush. So I guess it depends on how I feel in the day when I wake up, but 9 times out of 10 I roll out of the side of the bed where I'm going to use a brush. So as you can see, we're doing the line work here, not getting any of the detail, but just getting down from the sketch through the light box. I know you really can't see what's under there, but you can see the drawing as it comes out, almost as if I'm drawing it freehand. So we're going to go in there in some detail, start working this out. I don't tend to plan too much in the sketch stages. It depends on the drawing. I like knowing where I'm going in my head, but then working it out on the paper. I think some of my best work is my spontaneous work. I think that I'll say a lot of times the stuff that I struggle with the most is usually stuff that comes out the best. So there are times I've done full drawings and have had to throw it away because I just didn't like how it looked, or do another version of it. And I will say that those drawings that I labor over usually come out better than the ones that I don't. But that's only because it's not really worked out in my head first. If it's worked out in my head, it usually works out, period. Sometimes I work things out and it doesn't come out as I have it visually in my brain. And that's when I have to go rework the piece, and I'm doing it in real time in my head on actual finished paper and so on and so forth. So as you can see here, the sketch is worked out pretty well. I was very happy with the sketch. This is the one of three. The next one is going to be Bob. That's B-O-B stands for something. We'll just call him Bob. Story-wise, that means something. And it's a little more intimidating than the word Bob. I won't go into it. If you haven't already, go check out Sons of Fate and you'll learn what Bob means, because they don't call him Bob in the book. But back to the drawing, yeah. We're getting pretty close to getting all the line work done. You'll see I go in there and there will be some thick lines to kind of define where I'm going to go when I add the value. A lot of times you'll see, technique-wise, I say this in a longer version too, I go into depth more, but I'm left-handed, as you can see, and I should work right to left. But process of the thing has me going all over the place. Discipline-wise, I would say I tend to work on what I am interested in seeing and don't think about it. So there's a little splotch, a little under her elbow to the left that I just made worse, which will be me putting my hand down over the ink that hasn't dried yet. And sometimes it's a happy mistake and sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's not. And it just goes to say how I should be a little more mindful when I'm doing my work. But I don't mind it too much. It's not a terrible thing. So as we get in the rest of her outfit, I'm going to go in there a little more and add in the X's for where I'm going to do her heavy shadow. That's a reminder to know that that's going to be pure black. Then I go in and add a little more detail here and there. And there's the line drawn with my new Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. Okay, so now we're going to go into actual finishes of the work. And this is where I heavy up some of the lines to create value. I've drawn a lot of the black line and create positive, negative space, shadow, draperies in her clothing or kimono, details in the kunai, which I'll get into, and the shadow work I drew in, along with what I'm doing now is the detail of her hair strands with the ink to define strands that are hidden or ones that are exposed to light. I'll go back in the end and hit a little correction pen and highlight some of those dark places as to white to further define the hair. I do that with other places inside the drawing. You'll see in the kimono, kunai. The actual overall thickness of the outline drawing and doing a splatter effect to define the character more. I go furthering the intricacies of her hair, the details, giving her more strands, going back into her face, adding shadow value. She's older. This is the Akemi from the older version, the series of Sons of Fate, where she's an older woman. In my dearly beloved, she's a younger version. So I have to make sure to add the age value in her face. But you're looking at the older version of Akemi, not the younger version. I think with this campaign, I'm going to do versions. When I do the other characters of the book, I am going to do the younger versions of too. There you go, adding in the details for the kunai. Some value in the knuckle. Let's handle the kunai. The left side of her kimono, I'm gonna add some value in to separate that from her arm, the belt that actually is tied around her kimono. Like I said before, if you guys are interested, I have an hour version of this. It took me about an hour in real time to get this done. Commentary is just a little more in depth of this if you guys are interested. I personally love seeing tutorials that take however long it takes, but that may not be for you. So I have this version, which is a lot faster than the real-time version, but if you're interested, I am uploading the real-time version into on YouTube on my page, so be sure to check that out. Remembering to go right to left, as you can see this time, I actually went right to left. As I said that. Like I said, I get so caught up in the work that sometimes I just jump from place to place. I may miss something and then instinctively just go, or have an idea even, and go in to fill it in. I try to give myself room for interpretation, where everything isn't so laid down that I have to commit to the sketch. It gives me freedom to make changes, even experiment some. And I'm usually happy with the results, so I stick to that way. I'm not, if I have to, I will really go and do something where what I lay down is exactly what's there, but it's more technical aspects. I would say buildings, vehicles, things like that. Things I have to get accurate. If I have to nail a 1969 Shelby, then that will be something I plan out to total execution. And do not leave room for interpretation, as you can imagine. So, Akemi was pretty buff as a young woman, so I'm going to add some lines into her wrists and arms because she maintains some of that muscle definition in her twilight years. Okay, getting done with the work. Okay, this is when I go in and add the value for bumping up the thicker drawing. I don't do a heavy outline as much as I do more of a dry brush effect. And this is a lot of the way I destroy my Winsor Newton. Instead of going in with a beat up brush, I go in with the brand new brush and just flatten it out and dry brush the edges. Thing about the brush is that a good washing and some conditioner, you know, it's made of horsehair, so it is literally hair. You know, if you maintain it, it'll last a long time, and you could literally beat the shit out of this brush and it'll still maintain, which is why it's so expensive and worth the penny, every penny. Okay, undoing the smudging, the actual dry brush work. So now I'm going to go on with the correction pen, create some value within some texture actually within the kimono. to give it a little variation. So it's not just hard lines. It'll be where light would hit it. I always try to think of my illustrations, it's a painting where there's value all over the place. And although black and white doesn't portray that very well, unless you gradate, then in gradation, if I were to paint this, those would be spots that would be of lesser or higher value, depending on how the light bounces off of it. I actually go into and, like I said earlier, highlight parts of the hair to give it more definition. Highlight the dark spots inside. The lights, I add light parts inside of the dark spots to, again, show more definition and volume of the piece. Includes your eye, eyeball, lighting. And going back in, adding more value with the brush. Actually, I used a dry brush there, just to even it out a little bit. I didn't use a new brush. I don't tempt fate too much. There we go. So here's the finished version of the ink drawing. There, it's a version toned. And here's the ad completed. Thank you for joining the latest episode of Japes Drew This. Be sure to check out the Patreon for the print, which is in the description.